What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Thought Leader Podcast, Episode 2. I am your host, Dillon, and in this podcast, we interview past and current thought leaders in their space in hopes to reach past, current, and most importantly, aspiring thought leaders that have a message, have a mastery to get out to the world, but haven't yet acted on it. We interview people and understand their journey in the realms of health, wealth, and relationships. Today, we will be speaking with Scott Larkin. I'm very excited for this. A little bit about Scott Larkin. Scott Larkin is an entrepreneur and service-disabled, veteran-owned small business owner of Advanced Systems, Inc., ASI. He served 20 years in the United States Navy. Scott, thank you so much for all of your service. Retiring as an intelligence officer, and has spent the last 20 years after that providing information technology and cybersecurity services management as a federal government and defense contractor for the FAA, the VA, the Department of Labor, and the Department of Defense. Mr. Larkin holds a Master of Science in Computer Information Systems and is certified as a Project Management Professional, PMP, and Certified Information Systems Security Professional. As ASI's Chief Scientist, he drives ASI's current innovation in catastrophe survival endeavors programs. And that's what we're going to be speaking on today. Like I said, the topic in the realm of health, living through past and future catastrophes, what will affect our health, and how can we innovate to survive? My God, this is going to be knowledge bearing. I am very excited. Scott, thank you so much for joining us on the Thought Leader Podcast.
Thank you, Dillon. It's great to join you.
My goodness, you've done a lot. And again, thank you so much for your service. You spent a lot of time there. We're going to talk about kind of the story leading into serving, and then leading in from there into going into intelligence, going into cybersecurity, and most importantly, catastrophes and how we can best prep and be ready for them. But this is called the Thought Leader Podcast. So I always like starting this with really the same question, because I really feel that word thought leader is very subjective. Everyone has their own way of viewing it. So for you in the space, what does being a thought leader mean to you specifically?
For me, to be a thought leader means to apply the expertise that I've developed in my domains over the years to bring, through my communication skills, information to others that they can then use to improve their lives, better themselves. And I build on that through my recent experience with the Thought Leader program, where individuals like Sharon Zihave and Elena Fernandez and Taylor Conroy brought a really good program to highlight speaking skills and some of the other things. They lead to TEDx talks. And that built upon years of training that I had put together from doing things like reading the Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the Steve Scott Master Strategies of Super Achievers, and even the most recent Billy Jean, who does the Genius program, which is using AI for marketing purposes. So all things that build towards being able to get out there, network, and help people improve their lives.
Yeah, I really like that. So it's almost starting with take the time first to build your craft. And I mean, we have decades of experience that you've done. And then after that, it's build onto the craft a way to communicate that to other people so they can take it into their lives. And it's like all the research you've done, the programs you've invested in allows you to better perfect that communication craft to get it out there. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's absolutely right.
I'm a big believer in the power of story. I think the power of story dictates time and history, right? So I like to start these as well with like understanding the beginning of your story, right? This started like understanding your bio. It started with serving our country in the Navy. So if you could kind of take us back, what was the initial story? What gave you the drive to want to serve our country? Which again, thank you very much.
Well, you're certainly welcome. My story starts with having been an Air Force brat. My father served 5 years in the Marines and 21 in the Air Force. And I was at home recently, just after his 91st birthday, and we talked about when he was 18 and making the landing at Incheon, as we watched a movie together on Netflix about the Chosin Reservoir battle, the largest battle of the Korean War, where he was one of the 20,000 Marines there that helped fend off 300,000 Chinese that were coming down to assist North Korea at that time. And he had some great tales to tell me about that. So when I was in high school, I said, "Hey, Dad, you've been in the Marines, you've been in the Air Force. What should I do with my life?" And he said, "Join the Navy. It's the only good service where they recognize your advancement potential."
Okay, so because you were telling me that your dad going into the Air Force, you then go to the Navy. So it did come from that piece of advice from your dad just to see like how quick you can kind of advance.
Yes. Uh-huh.
My goodness. I mean, that talk about the power of stories, being a young kid and hearing 20,000 versus 300,000. That had to be absolutely incredible. And then for you getting started, like what would be a way to encapsulate your time in the Navy? Because it was 2 decades, like reflecting back on it now.
So I initially had a Navy scholarship. I went off to Oregon State University.
Go Beavers.
Go Beavers. Failed miserably and enlisted instead. Spent 3.5 years enlisted. So within a 4-year period, I earned a 4-year degree and had 3.5 years of enlisted service because I finished my degree through correspondence while on active duty. And then went back through officer candidate school and was commissioned as a surface warfare officer. So I drove ships for a while. And then I switched over to the intelligence community and retired in that capacity out of Japan in 1999.
We actually have one of our thought leader employees in Japan right now. Shout out Lindsay. That's actually one of the questions I wanted to ask is like you start in the Navy. I have a couple of buddies that went into the Navy, but you finish your time there going into intelligence and then going into cybersecurity. Was there any specific event that happened? Was this always the case of what you wanted to do? Or was there any event while you were serving in the Navy to shift and say, you know what, I want to lean towards the mastery of intelligence and cybersecurity?
It really had to do with information absorption and being able to fuse that information together to draw conclusions. So we had a lot of exposure to daily message traffic that I would glean for the folks that I worked for and tell them what they needed to be interested in and respond to. And over time, I applied that not to just work-related items, cybersecurity-related items, but also to things that came up of interest, such as the subjects under catastrophism.
Yeah, and that was going to be like, so one, really falling in love with that passing of information, right? Because there can always be breakdowns in that situation. But what then sparked, I mean, did you go through any specific or see any specific catastrophes, which then, because we're about to dive into, catastrophe management, catastrophe survival. We're about to go some depths here. What happened to shift your focus to this?
As a child in Japan, I had a house fire occur in the house that I lived in, and we escaped from that. And then as a damage control assistant on one of the frigates I was assigned to, we had boiler fires, we had floods, we had all sorts of things to respond to. And I was trained to be a nuclear biological chemical response officer. So that level of danger and the like was heightened. And then as we transitioned into living in Japan, of course, earthquakes there. First, as a child, as I arrived in Japan, they just finished the 1968 earthquake that caused fissures in the ground to open, exposing some of the World War II aircraft hangars that were underground near the base. And one of the local schools, the children died when their buildings collapsed as a result. Japan's very active in earthquake areas.
They just had one recently, right?
Yes, they've had quite a few. And then I was there for the eruption of Mount Pinatubo, and we saved people from that volcano in the Philippines. I was there for the Oakland earthquake, San Francisco earthquake in 1989, I'd say, where we evacuated some of the homeless that were there after that event. So a lot of various disasters that kept it focused in my life.
I am just now realizing how little catastrophes I've went through in my life, hearing all of the ones that you've went through. So it's just like a seed that starts at a young age with fires and then going into, volcanoes erupting and earthquakes. And we're getting ready to speak to our audience on catastrophes or cataclysm. So when you say the word catastrophe and cataclysm, and for us to get ready for it, what type of events now in today's society are coming to mind for you? Like, what are the big ones you feel you want to talk about or you feel is best to share to our audience?
So first, to understand there's different levels, right? So a disaster is going to affect something locally. and maybe weather related and impact local economies. Then above that, you have catastrophes, which affect regions and maybe something like a volcanic event or the like. And then you have cataclysms, which is where major portions of the globe are affected, such as when a solar burst might take out our entire grid across portions of the globe, frying the electronics that we have, causing years to recover. And then the final event is the extinction level event. And we think this happens about every 12,000 years, is associated with pole shifts and can essentially cause continent reformation.
Okay, so really the lower levels being catastrophes, then getting up to cataclysms, and then really getting up to like instinct or extinctual events. So you being with ASI, right? You really going into like the cybersecurity and understanding what innovations are really going to be best to aid our survival, not just for catastrophes, but for potentially cataclysms. It seems like extinct. We might not be able there yet, but when you think catastrophes and cataclysms, what innovations are going to aid us?
So it's good to see the FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, has really been making some leaps and bounds in what they're doing in the last couple of years. And there's really a large connected internet network across government, but state, federal, local levels that has been working towards doing disaster exercises and working on communication planning and things like that. But at a personal, local level, individuals that can work on getting the prep things that they would need to survive for really extended periods of time without electricity, without food sources, without water sources, that sort of thing. So, for instance, right now in Oregon, where my sister lives, they've had over a half-inch of ice. She's been trapped in the house that they're in for a week now. And they've had electricity at one location, but another, the trees and telephone lines have come down twice so far. And so it's been projected at least another week of being without power. So you have to be prepared for the potential that all this increasing weather disturbances and the like are causing.
So with this, what I'm hearing is obviously FEMA's taken good steps recently. So I'm thinking at a government scale, we're starting to act on it and really practice this more. At an individual scale, like what your family members going through in Oregon, what would you recommend? Like, is there any simple innovations or any simple like ways of thinking we can shift to be better prepared to aid ourselves in an event of a catastrophe?
So collaboration tools that have recently been developed, as long as you have access to the internet, you can look now and determine what other people are doing. What's the best thing to have on that list of things that you can provide? Do you need to start thinking about canning your own food, doing dehydration preparations? Do you need to just have lots of canned goods on hand? If there's a list of things you might want from a pharmacy that are all non-prescription, feminine products, toothpaste and toothbrushes, so just lists and lists and lists of things that would help you survive in a comfortable fashion for several days should the power go out. Now, if your place burns down, which happened to my house about 15 years ago now, you lose all that unless it's in a protected and fire enclosed environment. So different levels of preparation that you can do based on where you're at and the like. During 9/11, I had to walk out of the area that I normally worked at near the Pentagon. And that event let me know that, I had to be mobile. So a go bag, things like that.
What about any innovations, like you say, specifically for food and water? Is it, hey, just have these on hand, like you're saying, and make sure you have a storage just in case, make sure you're protecting it from any potential fire? Is there any other innovations when it comes to obtaining water specifically, I would imagine, and food?
So if you have an electric source, and there are ways to make sure that you do with generators that can be either hand powered or solar powered or gas powered and the like, you can use evaporative technology to draw water out of the air. If you don't have that, but you have access to murky water of some sort, mud puddles to ponds, or lakes or streams or rivers, you can get filtration devices. They sell them on the open market now, but is it going to be a one-time use, or is this something I can use over time? So there's a lot of innovative products that are being developed. a lot of things, if you think, boy, I wonder if there's such a solution, you go out there and you say, oh, yeah, here it is. Boy, it's expensive. I can't afford it. So then you look, does the community have an innovative plan to get that out to me? Can I go to a distribution place? Are these events the communities hold going to help me in such a situation?
Yeah, so it really sounds like, one, make sure you have the proper tools, make sure you're starting to store, make sure you're doing your research, right? So you can find, it's actually my grandmother-in-law got us one of those filtration straws for Christmas. So like having something like that around, it almost is like, hey, I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it with a lot of this stuff. As ways to, and I never knew you could obtain water from just the air. Like, what's a typical process to do that?
So it's a matter of creating a temperature difference in a moist environment that allows water to condensate and then drip into a container that you gather it from.
You also said something earlier about solar flares, right? That knocking out mostly electricity, but we're talking in the realm of health, and you're talking to a very pale-skinned redhead. Is there the dangers to our health from the sun? If so, what seem to be the biggest dangers that you see in your research?
Well, it's like people have concern when they go to the dentist, is the x-ray is going to affect me, right? Well, the sun does, among other things, it puts out x-ray blasts. And the x-rays that gamma rays, other forms of radiation that come, the cosmic rays from the background of the universe come through more when our geomagnetic protection of the planet has been disrupted as it is now because the poles are shifting. So as time goes on, we are losing our magnetic field, and so more of the radiation is getting through. And what it has the effect of doing is causing a greater number of strokes, heart attacks, disruptions to our electrical circuits within the human body. And it can also affect just mental states so that people don't act normally.
So if I could get this right, layman's terms I always like to call them Dillon terms. Poles shift, more sun electromagnetic waves come in, and that then affects our internal electromagnetic system, causing more strokes, more heart attacks, more negative mental states. Is that true?
Yes.
Man, okay. And then what would be a way someone listening, like how do you stay proactive of something like that? It's like, you can see someone might be thinking, I'm taking on the damn sun right now. That's a big thing. Like, what can we do proactively just for like small energy shifts for that?
So a lot of our mental state, a lot of our physical well-being is controlled by how well we take care of ourselves with proper nutrition and vitamins and things like that. But it's also controlled just by being active in your environment. So all the things you normally do to survive, and be healthy and be well, be social, those types of activities will keep you in a stronger state to combat negative influences on your life.
So it's a lot of what, people would tell us in general. Take your vitamins, make sure you're exercising, make sure you're getting out, being active socially, just to kind of stay in that movement. But what you're adding on to it is like, hey, also be ready because you're taking on the sun. So maybe do this a little bit more of a kick in the pants for someone to do this. Yes.
Yes. And it's not, that's at the nominal levels that we receive now. When the sun decides to get really active, which it does at the peak of its every 11 or so year cycle, we get more sunspots, which generate more sun flares, generate more coronal mass ejections, have wider areas of coronal holes that send faster streams of solar energy at us. And all of that can come at us and affect more than just the health system by itself. If you lose the electric grid, many of the things we depend on for health are tied to having access and having transportation and having the ability to go and buy and do and whatnot. And so any of that can over time disrupt our state. So we need to be able ultimately to transition from where we're at now back to the way the Amish live, the way people in countries that are off the grid for a large part live, and not lose some of the old knowledge.
Yeah. And I for you, and I'm sure we're going to talk about getting outside your comfort zone and talking about this, because it's like, it's not always a subject that people are probably excited to talk about and be like, oh my gosh, you're right. I could lose everything and have to live like the Amish, right? What's your recommendation to somebody listening to, like, what's the balance between being proactive and, keeping this in mind without, leaning to it, and this is in no way to step on toes, but without freaking out as if the sky is falling right now? Like, what do you feel that healthy balance is?
So right now, the folks that are most attuned to the science that we are continuing to uncover about how the sun and its cycles and the pole shift and its cycles are affecting our near-term future, we're looking at an outlook of anywhere from the 12 years that AOC mentioned when she came into office, and that's kind of tied to the 11-year sunspot cycle where you get intensification every year, 7 years. But it's also tied to the every 6,000 year flood cycle, which the last one was Noah's Ark. It's tied to the every 26,000 year cataclysmic events, which is where we see the previous civilization as the megalith builders, monolith builders, those folks that got wiped out. And they got wiped out in floods that brought 1,000-foot waves around the globe. So what's the time period for that? They think within the next 40 years.
So how does someone be able to hear something like that and operate with like more of a level head? Like what?
Again, that's why I'm encouraging innovation,
Yeah.
because ultimately everybody on the planet dies. We live, we die.
Mm-hmm.
What we don't want to have happen is the entire species to die out. In the past, we haven't, but we may have gone down to just a few hundred people.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we try to make sure that not only do enough of us survive to have some continuity, but that we also bring our civilization forward with us? Can we take the knowledge that we have now and put it engraved using these 3D printers that we have and the like, and engraving printers? Can we put it on tablets, make it so that it's nearly indestructible, much as the Sumerian tablets done in clay were for thousands of years?
I want to take a different, as we wind up to here today, I want to take a different approach to this because, like I said, like very direct, I guess, this is an uncomfortable topic, right? But it is also something that you're very passionate about, and it's had a seed early in your life with like catastrophes of even house fires, right? So it's clearly a passion of yours. But to really start to get out there, you have to get outside your comfort zone, I'm sure, often.
Definitely.
How are you able, like a lot of people, when it starts to get uncomfortable, they cower down. They're like, you know what, I'm going to stay comfortable. Why is it so important for you specifically to get outside your comfort zone? For anybody here that's listening that is looking to take that step, why has it been important for you to get outside your comfort zone?
So I've been protector warrior class is how I describe the pathway that I've taken in serving the country and being in businesses that support the industry to protect our cybersecurity and those sorts of things. And when it comes down to needing to be able to speak to folks, overcoming that hesitation and the like, you have to step outside your comfort zone. And the ways that I do that is through some of those things that I've learned, like being able to look at what motivates folks. I saw a presentation where a group of people were told, there's a lot of people in the world, and if you all live very longer, if you try to live longer, you're just going to make not enough room for the other people that are coming along behind you. So don't. And they went, oh, okay, yeah, we shouldn't try to do that. And you can't be sheep. You got to say, it's not just me. It's my kids. It's my grandkids. It's the whole civilization, the humanity, the human race, all the animals and the like. My wife's done animals for ever since I met her back in 1979. She's been doing care of animals.
That's amazing.
So
it really is for you. It's like, hey, I'm not just doing this for myself. I'm not like, this isn't just me to step outside my comfort zone to do it. You're thinking of the people that are coming after you as well. You feel like that's a power that motivates you and gives you that the ability to take that first step outside the comfort zone.
Yes. It comes from learning that to feel good about positive things that you're doing, you need to both ask for help and you need to give help readily. And once you begin doing that, it becomes an area that continues to, even if you fail, you always are, by making the attempt, you're getting closer to your goal. And there are folks out there like I think I mentioned before, Steve Scott and Stephen Covey, who talk about integrity in the moment of choice. That's Stephen Covey, and Steve Scott talks about shooting for the moon. Even if you reach for the stars and don't make it, you're going to land out there somewhere.
Yeah. I love that as aspect of, I think the more we start to learn from other people that are getting outside their comfort zone as well, the more we're like, oh yeah, it almost builds this confidence. Because that's another one. I guess this is just your personal opinion here. I'm sure you're aware there's a lot of people, we talk about not getting outside our comfort zone. A lot of people have this mastery. It doesn't have to be understanding catastrophes or cataclysms, but they have this mastery within them, or they have this message, this passion within them, but they don't step outside that comfort zone. What do you personally think is the biggest reason why people don't break that permeation barrier to step outside of their comfort zone and into the uncomfortable?
I think people try to choose the easy path. I think people are satisfied with being satisfied and not looking about for, is there something I can do to improve either themselves or their situation?
Mm-hmm.
People that are comfortable getting paid a certain rate and not asking for a raise because it's the least hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to remind folks around you, you have potential. You could do more. Let's see if we can help you.
And I guess that being like, is it just letting them know, hey, you have the potential, and letting other people know? Like for you, what would be the biggest piece of advice you would want to give somebody that's listening right now, and they're so close to stepping outside that comfort zone, but it's like 1 foot in, 1 foot out? Like, what's your biggest piece of advice for that person listening?
So never lose hope and always push forward on the envelope. And as you look at the people around you, remember everybody else is like, I'm the CEO of my company now and the chief scientist for it, and I'm able to mentor folks and bring them along. But if you don't have a mentor and one would benefit you, then go out and find them and explore those paradigms that you hold about what your current situation is. See if you can visualize a new goal, and then go out and innovate.
And speaking of innovation, it's something that you speak highly of. You can consistently speak on in this podcast. It's something that you do consistently. What are ways, like someone watching this, what would you want their next steps to be to learn more about this? I mean, or to learn more, do you want them to learn more about the company that you're with ASI? Like what are ways they can stay in connection with you to learn more about this and better prep?
So there's certainly a number of sources that you can search for on the internet, including things like YouTube. I also recommend the IDMB website, which is the movie website, right? Because there are so many disaster movies out there that you can say, wait a minute, these people are surviving these things. How are they doing it? And, you know, some of it's far-fetched, it would seem, but well, what if I need that skill? Is that something I can do? And then Advanced Systems Incorporated, we're starting into some projects that will use the collaboration tools that are out there. In particular, I'm using software called The Brain, and we are preparing a interactive web deliverable space that will allow people to search through all of the information we have researched and then get taken directly to product links as well.
So being that quick hub is what ASI really aims to do. Someone gets to go to a place like ASI, tap into The Brain, understand more about a specific type of catastrophe, a cataclysm, and then get directed towards places where they can purchase the products they need or the supplies that they need. Is that it?
It also is going to leverage all of the available information from FEMA and all of the other associated government organizations so that you can get easy pathways to their websites that say, here's the services you are needing to find. And it goes down to recording information that FEMA and other agencies have provided about, including state and local agencies, about catastrophe response in your region and area.
Really, it sounds like The Brain and ASI being a one-stop shop for people to best prep for any catastrophe or cataclysm that's to come, whether it's supplies to get or research or, you know, information that's out there.
That's what we're looking to build.
Scott, man, this was incredibly informative for me. I hope it's incredibly informative for anybody that is listening. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I am going to drop any links for anyone watching this on YouTube. They would like to stay in contact with Scott. You can check out the link in our description below. Scott, thank you so much for your time today. Any closing remarks from you?
It's been a pleasure. And again, the Thought Leader program and its people are all professionals. Dillon, it's been great to meet you. And thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Hey, Scott, that is my pleasure. And thank you all current and aspiring thought leaders out there looking to get outside your comfort zone. I want to take a couple of notes that I took from Scott here today. It's not just about you. You start thinking of the people that are going to be coming after us. Even if we're just being the people that are the first to walk and charge into the front lines, letting our kids know what that could mean to them, asking for help when you need help, and giving help when you're able to give help gives us that motivation and that confidence to keep pushing forward and learn from those that have come before you, whether through, like you said, books or reaching out to mentors. Biggest thing that I took towards the end there is if you've been kind of sitting on the edge of comfort to uncomfort, it's okay. Never lose hope and never be afraid to push the envelope. Thank you so much for being with us, Scott, and thank you so much for listening, all those in our audience. We will see you on the next episode of the Thought Leader Podcast.